Hello, everyone. So this is a story about passion. So I want you to feel your own passion right now. How is everyone doing? Good? Yeah? Okay, so I have 3 stories to tell you in 15 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it. My first story begins with a dirty laundry hamper. Okay, so this was about 10 years ago. I was a freshman in high school, and I had just joined the high school newspaper. This was not the most popular thing to do, and there was one problem with this. Everyone else, by the end of my freshman year, had quit the high school newspaper, and the seniors on the newspaper had graduated. So I was the only person left on the newspaper in my school. It was a suburban public school in northern New Jersey. So I went to this summer journalism camp, not sure what to do. And the minute I got there, I noticed this amazing array of high school newspapers on the table. Newspapers from all across the country, high school papers with young people doing amazing things. And so much to my mom's kind of horror when she came to visit me at the summer camp, I took all my dirty laundry, I spewed it all across the floor, and I instead filled the laundry hamper with all the high school newspapers that I could possibly find, until I had about 150 in them. I didn't know what was getting into me, but I was just so excited by this possibility of young people building something amazing in their school. Later on in the summer, I went to my baseball team, and much to my dad's horror, I brought to the dugout these high school newspapers, and I said to my fellow baseball players, "Don't you want to join the high school newspaper?" And it wasn't really working, but over time, some of my friends got involved, and even some of the baseball players on my team, and they each said, you know what, let's go out and get some more people to join this. And then we had our first meeting, and at our first meeting, we had 130 people come to join the high school newspaper. Because all my friends were out there saying, you would want to be part of this. There's something you can write about that really excites you. So we kept going for a while. We tried to build this paper to be one of the best in the country that we could make it. And then we tried to push the envelope when I was a senior. And we wrote an article about marijuana use in the school, and then ultimately an article about the sexual mores of suburban high school students and the problems with sex education. And we were censored. So it turns out it's a little fun to be censored in addition to enraging. And so we were enraged. We were just absolutely beside ourselves. We were so upset that the principal had violated the 50-year tradition of the newspaper to be an independent newspaper. And so we published this article instead in a note to our readers, and we tried to appeal, and we went through this legal process. And soon we had about 60, 70 people in the community, in addition to our staff, all kind of protesting and saying students should have the right to free speech. That led us to examine and discover the policies that govern schools. And we started searching through them and finding out that these policies were written in the 1960s, all in the spirit of just sort of protecting the public safety of the students, but not really talking about the voice that students should have or anything like this. So we kind of came up close with all these policies, and then the ACLU got involved. And we got Bennett Zarofsky, an amazing lawyer who had a band called Bennett Zarofsky and the Solidarity Singers, to become our lawyer. And much to both of my parents' horror, on the day I graduated, we served papers to our school district, saying that we were going to be suing them unless they, put back intact our First and 14th Amendment rights. Long story short, 6 months later, when I was in college, we finally won the case. And our paper was, there's a new policy now that says we can't be censored for the next 47 years. And it was just the most ridiculous experience. And we and the principal are on a good, a decent page right now. But it was just this amazing, weird high school experience, my first of the 3 that I'll tell you about. And it left us with, and not just me, but this whole team that gathered around this, a couple of ideas. The first was that when we discover passion, when we discover our passion, suddenly you realize that you can do anything. This was something that we had seen in our high school newspaper, Suddenly, students who had been kind of falling through the cracks in our school, who had been bottom of the class, suddenly came alive. They found a passion for maybe it was law or something that they were writing about. We also found out that young people, learn the most when they are changing the world. And that this was not a lesson that we were taught in school, but as we were pushing up against the school district and looking at these policies and writing these appeals, that real-life education, that experience of deliberately learning how to break the rules in a productive way, was by far the most educational experience we had had. Also, in the back of my mind, I noticed that schools are not really broken. As we looked at these policies that I mentioned before, what we discovered is that this is exactly how schools are supposed to work. Schools are supposed to be places that cause students to kind of realize what they're mediocre at in a lot of ways, and to not break the rules and not push the envelope. And so that was just in the back of our mind, because there was a lot of talk starting around this time about the problem with education, and the problem is with teachers, the problem is with the people, and that's not what really seemed true to us. It was that the very design of the system seemed to actually be working, and that was a problem, it seemed to us. The second story I'll tell is a few years later. When I went to college, I ended up at Yale and went in New Haven, in what was called the Model City. And the first thing that I remember about Yale was the freshman bazaar, where you walked in and there were hundreds and hundreds of these student activities and all these people with all these ideas, creating things and changing things and making things happen. All this inspiration, and so that was very exciting. And I chose my kind of club and organization. I went to work for the Yale Daily News. When you work for the Yale Daily News, the best beat that you can get as a reporter is to cover Yale and to be one of these people covering this elite Ivy League university and all that sort of thing. And I got instead assigned to the city beat to cover New Haven. And this is the sort of the lowest of the beats, and no one really found it very interesting. My first assignment was to go to a Board of Aldermen meeting. And at the Board of Aldermen meeting, I didn't feel that same kind of sense of passion and energy that I was feeling at Yale when it was a meeting specifically about youth violence. Instead, it was this very challenging conversation that was being had about how there had been summer shootings in New Haven. So I started talking to the students and asking them what was really going on, and they invited me to their school, James Hillhouse High School, one of the largest, most challenged schools in the country. And first, I started writing stories about the achievement gap and the crisis in education as it had been kind of framed. But then I realized that the real story about education wasn't really being told. When I started speaking to teachers and to the principal and to students, what I found is that they had these big ideas and all of these passions that weren't being engaged at school. They had big ideas for things that they would do if they just had permission to kind of disrupt things, to shape their own school experience, teachers to shape their own classroom experiences, to really use their passions through school. And the truth was that they were just bored. There was just a lot of disengagement. And so this was kind of in my head, and I took education classes, but nowhere was there a discussion about was there a discussion about how to really engage people and create entrepreneurs and innovators. When I went, after college, I went to DC, and I ended up as a speechwriter somehow to Joe Biden, which was a whole nother talk. And this was another ridiculous experience, and I was there because I was summoned by the sense of infinite possibility of the country and in this moment, the new American narrative, and I wanted to play a part as a speechwriter. While I was doing this, I ended up mentoring a student through a program in DC and working with one student in particular, a student you see here from Bangladesh, who had been in the DC public schools for many years. And he was struggling with his English and struggling with his SATs and the whole thing. And I was told, help this student get into college. And I remember distinctly the moment where I was walking around the high school hallway at his school in DC, and we were working on his college essay, and I asked him the question, what really brings you alive? What really excites you? Maybe that could be a start of your college essay. And he stopped, and he said, I've never been asked that question before. I've never been asked what my passion is. I don't really know how to start answering that. And so we started kind of talking a little more, and I asked him what his dreams were, and he said, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. And so I started talking to a lot of my friends who had been involved in mentorship programs, and started talking to my friends who had gone on to be teachers. And they all kind of confirmed the same idea, which is that these are not the kinds of conversations that are happening in schools. And so in these kind of ridiculously contrasting experiences of being at Yale and seeing New Haven, being in the White House, and then going to the DC public schools, I saw that although there was this narrative publicly at the time of building a country with more possibility than ever, it didn't really feel like it in the heartland of America, or in the public schools, or in all kinds of places that I was visiting as a reporter. It struck me that one of the most unjust gaps in modern America is the inspiration gap. The fact that because of who students get to know, or the kinds of lessons that they're taught, inspiration is seen as a luxury, as opposed to what I think is a spirit of this conference, the catalyst that causes you to realize your own greatness. But I also saw, as my co-founder got involved, who I met at college, and then so many of my friends who began to join and say, I want to be part of something, to do something about this, that this is one of the most solvable gaps in America. Because everyone, each one of you has a passion, and that passion can be given to a young person, and that young person can give you back passion, and together we can really begin to inspire each other. And it seemed like we would really have to build a movement around this. Around this time, the third story, my co-founder and I picked up a book called How to Change the World. We had never heard of the concept of social entrepreneurship. But as we went through this book and started reading the stories of people who had seen a problem and done something about this, it suddenly sort of struck us that behind all this language and all these ideas about entrepreneurship, it was really the story of people not wanting to wait for permission to do something about what they needed to see change in the world. And that was very inspiring. And so we said, you know what, let's bring our friends together, and why don't we build a project about recreating the future. We called it the Future Project. And the Future Project, we didn't really know what we were going to do. We started putting out these invitations about, what if our generation came together to begin to work as coaches and as volunteers to support students in building projects that take their passion and use them to change the world in their own backyards, in their own communities. And then your life changes as a result in return. And we started putting out this call, and finally we didn't know what was going to happen. And on September 11, 2010, on the National Day of Service, we gathered in New York City, and 90 people showed up that day and said, we want to build something. And they instantly took ownership of this. And we said, let's build this so that it launches a year later by 9/11, 10 years after 9/11. And on that day, we launched in 3 cities, in New York, New Haven, and DC. We launched with hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who had come together to say, you know what, we can do something about this, and that every young person has passion and has greatness, and it's time we work together to let that out, because that's the future of America. And so we launched the Future Project, and we discovered something along the way. So first, as I mentioned, the experiencing this and not really knowing how to exactly begin, we just realized that you don't have to wait for permission to start doing something extraordinary, start doing something that you really believe in. We saw that nothing great ever happens without a great team. But the third thing, the thing that we didn't expect to find out, is that it's time for a new kind of leader in America, someone who stands for you. So what happened was, as we started to send all these volunteers into schools, we discovered that the students were so excited about the people who were full-time dedicated to doing this. We had full-time people in all of our partner schools. And they started naming them, and suddenly the name emerged of a dream director. And so suddenly, out of all these ideas, the single idea coalesced of, what if there were dream directors? What if across schools all across the country, we had these inspirational figures who are part innovators, part entrepreneurs, people who went into the community, found hundreds of volunteers, brought them into schools, and brought a whole school community together to do something about their passions and to change the world. And these dream directors, they started coming out of the woodwork. We had thousands of applications for them. And now we have 16 dream directors full-time across 4 cities. And we are committed to the day that there are dream directors, because they're hiding in plain sight. Many of them are you, who are across this country in schools everywhere, standing for the infinite possibility of young people. I want to close with something that was inspired by what Saul said when he started the conference. He said that young people, that students need a voice in these moments. And so I want to hand the stage over for a closing video to just see one of the stories, so you can see what it looks like for a future project to be born, for a young person to figure out through working with a coach and a dream director that they can take their passion and change the world. This is the story, briefly, of Marielle Garcia, a student. She was a senior at the time at Richard R. Green High School in New York City, one of the many hundreds of future projects that are being born every day. So I'm going to hand it over to Marielle.
I just want to thank you. Today, my dreams are becoming a reality, and you are all part of that, and it just means the world to me. Oh, I'm so excited. I am standing here before you today because I am fed up. Fed up that suicide is the third leading cause of death among adolescents. Fed up that there are bullies out there right now tormenting the innocent. Fed up that there are so many people out there who cry themselves to sleep at night thinking they are alone. But are we really alone? Is death the only way out? I have been a dreamer on standby for a long time, and today that changes. I am making my dreams a reality with all of you here today. I have a dream that one day we will love ourselves, our flaws, our shortcomings, our strengths, our past, our present, and our future. It is a dream that is so close to my heart, and a dream that all of you are helping to make come alive today. I have a dream that we will look within ourselves and find the beauty and the value that radiates from every single cell in our body. I have a dream that one day this generation will rise up and live life the way it is meant to be lived, happily and freely. A day when we hold ourselves in high esteem and never, and I mean never, ever, doubt our dignity. I have a dream that one day we will rise up to the challenge of being ourselves in a world that tries to confine us to its definition of acceptable. I have a dream that one day on the streets of New York City and of the world, young people will look at each other and acknowledge the gift of life, of friendship, of happiness, and smile, spreading love and breaking down those barriers we built to hide. I have a dream that each one of us will now turn around and hug each other because we're awesome. I have a dream that one day we will all look at each other and acknowledge the fact that we are all fellow human beings worthy of all honor and respect. I have a dream, and I am making it a reality every day that I live by how I act, how I love, and how I treat the people around me. I am the embodiment of the reality that when darkness consumes us, dawn comes. I'm the embodiment of the message that human life in its unique and vulnerable nature is precious. I have a dream, and today, with each and every one of you here today, yes, all of you, I am making my dream known to the world.
That was the story of Marielle, who took her passion for sort of social image and social media and the way that young people talk about themselves and think about themselves to build a movement. And you saw they closed down a city block in New York for the day that her project launched. If I can leave you the inspiration of Marielle with one question to ask yourself today and every day of the rest of your life is how will you use your passion to change the world and inspire the next generation to do the exact same thing. Thank you so much.